keep finding ways that we're helping partners finding either, balance in their life or focus or purpose.
Practices that are going to help improve your project management skills or your finances.
We're here to talk about setting long-term goals and then how to achieve them.
Increasing your quality, therefore becoming the best place in town to work.
Welcome to Academy Live.
Welcome back to Academy Live. We've all been asked the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? For some, that's an easy question, and for others, it's a bit more challenging. We are here to help you. On today's show, we're talking about tips to drive your career. Career growth is such an important topic, and I'm very excited that we get to explore it today. Our guest is Lisa Aaron. Let's bring her and Chris on the show.
Lisa, great to see you. So glad to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I am great. Good to see you both.
Awesome. Hey, we want to start with tell our listeners a little bit about you. We like to call it kind of the humble brag. So tell us a little bit about you and your role at PAX8.
Absolutely. My career journey has been primarily in the learning and development space, focused on training. I am really excited to say that I'm coming up on my 9-year anniversary at PAX8 and in my third role. My current role is the Senior Organizational Effectiveness Consultant. Really, we're focused on helping teams become stronger together so every person feels safe and a sense of belonging. Super excited to be here.
Well, I like that you kind of had your own evolution. Obviously, you said, kind of this is your third major iteration of your job or your roles or career at PAX8. How much of that was planned? I'm just curious if you could just tell us real quick about how you kind of progressed to each of those to get where you're at now. Was it kind of planned? Did you have a focus? Were things reactive to the environment changing? Tell us a little bit about your journey in those roles.
Good question. I don't want to give away too much because some of the details I'm going to talk about during our time together today when we're talking about different stages and how you drive your own career. But I would say just during conversations, the next step sort of evolved. I didn't always have like, this is my career and this is where I'm driving toward. It was more organic than that. Through figuring out what I'm passionate about and really meaningful conversations with my leaders.
Great. Well, like you said, we'll get into a lot more of that in the details, as I think, and some of that might show up. But I want to get into this. We have a video to play, and I find this just fascinating. I love these, and you share these kind of things. But if we could play this video, what are we looking at here, Lisa?
We are looking at right now the side of my house, the view of my office window. We live in Colorado, and we are so fortunate to have a man-made pond in our backyard. So we set up outdoor cameras, and we are so lucky to get a lot of wildlife that come and get a little drink or walk up the side of our house. So we got raccoons and mountain lions and bobcats and bears, and it's super exciting. Especially, I'll say for me, who I grew up in Chicago. So here I am among nature. I think it's really special, and we absolutely love it.
I love it too. I grew up in Chicago too, Lisa, and my dad recently, like a few years ago, built a man-made pond in our backyard. I love hearing his stories of, what animals he sees out there. We do not see those kind of animals, but he sees sometimes a raccoon, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and PAX8 is kind enough to let me share my videos with the company, and thank you, studios, for letting me brag a little bit and putting that compilation together so I can show off a little bit where I live.
I love those. Whenever I see you post those, I get excited to kind of look and see. It just kind of still boggles my mind. I grew up in Colorado, but it still kind of boggles my mind to think that they're right there, like just up close and personal, right in your own backyard.
Well, Lisa, you brought some slides with you today. So we wanted to kind of get started by taking a look at that and tell us a little bit about this Drive Your Career program, how it started, and what we're going to talk about today.
You got it. One of my favorite subjects. So my previous position at PaxState was as the director of career development, and it's so important to PaxState that every employee really thrives in their career and thrives at PaxState. So I was lucky enough to roll out programs to help support employees finding out what they want to do and helping them get there. And the Drive Your Career program is one of those programs that we created to help people identify what it is they want to do and get there. So I'm really excited to talk about this career development plan that PaxState created. And it's
Oh, are you okay?
Yeah, sorry, I was hearing some echo. Sorry about that. So, driving your career is relevant to anybody, regardless of where you work or what stage of life you're in or what stage of career you're in. This is really something you can pick up at any point. So we created for our employees a participant guide that we have put in our the YouTube page for you to download. So it's got our 3 steps of our career development plan, as well as key points and questions that you can ask yourself as you go through navigating your career. So why is thinking about your career important? Taking a step back and really thinking about what's important to you really gives you your personal North Star. It helps you with your decisions that you're going to make and the actions that you take toward fulfilling what your long-term goals are. Having your North Star really helps you stay focused, stay motivated, and intentional in your growth. So it really ensures that every step that you take aligns with what you aspire to do. So by actively planning out your career path, you're not just navigating your professional journey, but you're charting a course toward the future that you envision for yourself. Now, I'm going to talk a lot today, but if you hear nothing else, there are 2 things I want you to hear. And here's the first thing. You are the driver. You are the driver of your own career. No one else should be more invested in your career than you. No one knows your strengths, your passions, or your aspirations better than you do. Your career journey is uniquely your own, and you have the power to shape it into something extraordinary, into whatever that means for you. So I get asked a lot, like, what does being the driver of my career mean? I think it means 2 words. You decide. You decide where you want to go, the direction you want to take. You decide what path you're going to take to get there. You might have the exact same goal as someone else, but the way you're going to get there is going to be uniquely yours. It also means not waiting for someone else to identify opportunities for you. It means you decide which opportunities you're going to seek out and pursue. You decide how much effort you want to or have the ability to put into your own career right now. Is this the right time for you to focus on your career, or how much time do you have? Maybe you have a lot of family stuff going on right now. Maybe you're pursuing higher education. Maybe you are perfectly content in what you're doing right now. So you decide if now is the right time and how much effort you're going to put into this. Even if now is not the right time, you can decide in the future when you're ready. And the other thing I want to mention is, while you're the driver of your career, you're not alone on your journey. Regardless of where you work, I highly encourage you to either speak to your manager, a counselor, a mentor, a trusted friend or advisor about your career goals, because they can really provide insight, guidance, and support you on your journey. So I want to talk about sort of the realities of our careers and the different paths we can take. Oftentimes, or maybe it's just my generation, we thought about our careers in a traditional career ladder, in that we start in this role, and in order to advance, we have to move up to level 2, level 3, maybe become the manager. So that was sort of a traditional way of thinking. We might also think in this traditional career ladder mindset if we don't know what else is out there. Maybe we started with a company very young in our careers and we don't even know what other roles are within the organization. So we kind of feel like we have to stay in our lane. But the realities are that your careers are going to be more like a jungle gym. Let me share a little bit about my career. Sort of where I started in my career in my mid to late 20s, I was managing a customer service center. And I was very fortunate to have a leader who saw a post, and I lived in Chicago at the time, and a leader of mine saw a job opening here in Denver for our same company for a trainer role. So my leader saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself and said, you need to apply for this position. So it was really interesting. I had an opportunity to move to Colorado and start a job, I'll say, in something that I never thought of, that was a full-time job, but it really excited me because it's something I'd love to do, help people learn new things. So I moved from a manager of a customer service department to a trainer. Now, a lot of people might see that as a step back, but for me, it was definitely a step up. I was heading down a new direction, learning some new things, getting new opportunities. From there, I was promoted to the manager of training. After a while, that got a little tiring, so I was a business analyst. I even then, from there, very short-lived, became a project manager. I quickly, within a month or two, found out I should not be a project manager. It was not for me. So I took a step back to go back into training. So I want you to know that your career is going to take you in all different directions. And I think that every single one of those steps, regardless of the direction, up, down, backward, sideways, is a really great opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn a new skill. It's an opportunity to build your network. And I think biggest of all, at least for me, it's an opportunity to learn about yourself. Not only what you like to do, but sometimes more importantly, what you do not like to do. So you know where to steer clear of as far as your next step.
Lisa, this really had a huge impact on me when I first saw the presentation on Drive Your Career of thinking of your career as a jungle gym. And I think maybe that's because, at least for me, maybe Chris also can kind of attest to this. We've had these winding roads and it feels like, oh, everyone else, not everyone else, but a lot of people, it seems like they study this in school and they go in that field and then they stay in that field the whole time. Whereas I think both of us have had these different changes and pivots and opportunities that we've taken advantage of. And I think it really, really impacted me. So I just wanted to pause there to just let you know that I really appreciated that analogy.
I love
I
the
think that's
analogy.
great.
Yeah, and the visual too, right? We think, it's not linear. It's good, you kind of go sideways or down. The rungs are different. It's not just this fixed pattern. And I think that openness to it. What struck me was the last thing you said about learning what you don't want to do or don't do well. I've seen people that they love to do something or they love the idea of it, they're bought into it, but their capacity to it's not really a strength, and then they struggle and it becomes a lot of effort just to perform to do that role. And honestly, then in the end they're really not happy. And so to understand some of that or things that you don't enjoy or that don't fill your cup, it's okay to acknowledge those. That helps drive your career path as well. So I'm glad you said that. Thank you.
It does. And to lean into something you said, Chris, so often we think that we have to build on our weaknesses. And while we do need to strengthen some things that aren't a skill just yet, isn't it even better if we can build on our strengths and our passions versus what we struggle with? Don't we want our jobs to be the things that we love to do versus me being a project manager would be a grind every day and it wouldn't be fun for anybody, right? So we want to build, even strengthen our strengths even more if we can.
That's I like that a lot.
Awesome. Well, what we did at Pax8 to help people on this journey is we created a career development plan, and it's only 3 steps. And all of these steps are in your participant guide that you can download. Now, the very first step is all about self-discovery, which I think is the foundation for a successful and satisfying career. So if you remember, I said there were two things that I'm going to say today that if you remember nothing else, remember those two things. The first was you're the driver of your own career. And this is the second thing. Self-discovery is critical to laying the path for what you want to do. By taking the time to understand what truly drives you, what inspires you, you can pursue a career that not only leverages your abilities, your skills, but really aligns with your core values or your core aspirations. So it leads to not only professional success, but hopefully, for me, even more so, personal satisfaction. So let's dig in a little bit. So step one is all about self-discovery. And we've got some questions here that you can ask yourself. I cannot emphasize the importance of this stuff enough. So if you remember when I was talking about my career path earlier, trainer to training manager to business analysts, all of those training type roles. When I started at Pax8, I came over as the director of training, which at that point we were pretty small, so it was me. But what I loved about that is the opportunity to meet with every single employee that came on board. I was training everybody. We didn't really have an onboarding program, but what are our products? What are our services? What are our processes? And then as Pax8 grew, I grew the team. And then I realized, I was more in the admin type role of management. So I was a little bit bored after a couple of years. And so I had a conversation with my leader. And she asked me the question that no leader had ever asked me before. And it's so simple, but she said, well, what is it that makes you happy? And I didn't really know right off the bat. So I had to do a lot of self-reflection and, what was missing? Why was I no longer excited about this role? And what I realized is what was missing was me having the ability to connect with employees, having an impact on people directly versus my team was now getting that opportunity. So we had a lot of conversations about not only what my interests were, my passions were, but where my skills lie. And oftentimes what you're passionate about, you're typically good at. And also what gap did Pax8 have? And I was extremely fortunate in my career to have a position created for me as the director of career development. So I then was in a position of creating programs to support other people. And that's when everything changed for me. That's when I changed from having jobs that I liked, but from having a job to feeling like I had a career. And so why all of a sudden did I feel so much happier and so much more inspired? It's because of that self-reflection. I realized that my core values were being fulfilled. One of my core values is making an impact to other people. And so I was able to do that by talking to people about their career and creating programs to support them. My other of my three core values are a sense of belonging. So I really need to be on a team that values me for who I am, and a work-life balance. I love what I do, but I work to have an amazing personal life. So this self-discovery, when you go through and think about not only what you're good at and what you want out of your career, what your values are, it's going to really allow you to look at the next step in your career to figure out how to align what you want against the jobs that you pursue. When you're interviewing with a team, you can ask them some questions on how they welcome team members into their teams. So, will your sense of belonging be supported? Will my sense of belonging be supported? So that self-discovery really guides the steps that you take in your career.
I love, Lisa, how you're talking about your values and the things that are so important to you. I know that Chris aligns with Chris too. So I just wanted to bring that up because when I was in graduate school, when we were near graduation, we're thinking about what jobs we wanted to do. We did an activity as a cohort around our values and what we were really looking for. And that was really helpful for me as I went into my job search immediately after grad school, because I was thinking about my values, what kind of questions am I going to be asking? What am I going to be looking for when they're talking to me? We know that interviews are two-way streets. So that I love that you're talking about that and knowing those for yourself, and that self-reflection is so helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Really speaking my language. We were kindred spirit. Like we've had some great conversations, but I think just that alignment with the values and the behaviors. I think that consistency, how many times do people not recognize that, aren't self-aware? And I think they fight that. Well, I need to be this at work. I need to do these things. But if it doesn't really align with what's important to you or how you are fulfilled, then that disconnect, it never fixes itself. It never all this magically just, if I work harder at this or do this more, then I'll feel better about it. And the older I get, the more I kind of go through my own career path or development and job. I recognize that around others about really, do you really know what makes you happy? What do you want? What are you good at? What drives you? And what's important to you? And I'm still amazed at how often people don't really have that answer.
It wasn't until very recently where I stopped asking myself those questions because I've always liked what I've done and I was good at it. So I didn't really know something was missing until I got it right. And then, oh my goodness, like truly, I get to come to work and do my job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something also important, being a little later in my career, I want to mention to people that are younger in their career, revisit this step throughout your career because you're going to go through different stages of your lives and your values are going to change. If you're just starting out, maybe one of your values is influencing people, is monetary. And then as you start building your family, maybe your value becomes your family. And for me, it's work-life balance. So revisit this because it's going to change, which will change your North Star and the direction you take on your career.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
Yeah. So in your participant guide, once you have identified your self-awareness, perform that insight, what really drives you. It's really going to help you identify your goals. It's going to provide clarity to identify what truly matters to you. So you're going to use what you learned in your self-discovery to define your goals. Some questions for you are listed here, but what you want to do is identify, what is the timeline for your goals? What goal do I want? And is this a short-term goal, 1 to 2 years, a long-term goal, 3 to 5 years? When you identify your goals, you want to make them pretty specific because a vague goal, which might look like get a better job, be a better leader, isn't really going to provide you with the direction you need on how to get there. Maybe you use your core values to create a goal on how you can focus your career around your core value or incorporate what inspires you more into your current job. Maybe there's some task realignment you can talk about with your leader. One of my core goals is making an impact on people. So maybe my goal would be to develop my coaching and mentorship skills to help my colleagues grow in their roles and reach their potential. So use that self-discovery to define what you want to do and what your goals are. And then you're going to create your development plan from that. How are you going to get there? So you've got this goal. What skills or experience or training do you need to achieve that goal? We've got some questions that you can ask yourself. What skills do I need to get to that goal? Am I already strong in that area? Or is this an opportunity for development? And you definitely want to consider not only our hard or our technical skills, like be really great at analyzing data, but what are your soft skills that are needed for your goal? If my goal is to become an influential leader, I have to ask myself if I lack or have the experience to influence people. Do I need to identify steps to increase that soft skill? So in your development plan, you want to make sure that your plan is measurable and specific. So remember, my plan might be to develop my coaching mentoring skills. So maybe my specific plan is over the next 6 months, I'm going to mentor 2 colleagues by meeting with them bi-weekly. And I'm going to support their development X ways and however they need support. And I'm going to track progress. And so it's very specific. And the thing I want to mention here in our development plan is that this is your plan. No one is going to hold yourself accountable for doing it except you. So make this meaningful and doable as well. Sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, I've got it. I know what my next big goal is. And these are my big plans to get there. But, if a big goal is great, but what if you're already stretched thin with time? Your job, is full time and you don't have maybe a lot of time for self-development. You have family obligations. Maybe you're pursuing education. How much time can you realistically spend on this plan? because you want to set yourself up for success. We want aspirational goals, but we also want to feel successful. So there's a balance there. Something I just want to mention, it's so helpful to use AI right now. You can upload like your current skill sets and what your goal is or your target job, and it can help analyze your skills and maybe give you some skills gaps that you might consider developing. You can ask AI to create a personalized learning plan for you based on your career goals and your current skills. It can even analyze your feedback that you've received if you upload it, and assess your maybe areas of strengths and areas for improvement. So it's a tool that we all have at our fingertips that can really help as you develop your growth plan.
I hadn't thought about that. Like of all the tools and things, I'm glad you mentioned that because we've had topics, we've brought up AI in the show, and I love examples, especially ones that are what I would consider non-traditional. Maybe just me, but I would not have thought of this as a use case for it to think about the personal development. I think about it more research, facts, objective, but why not? So thanks for bringing that up because I think it's a unique use case for it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I use it all the time. Once we have our plan in place, if you have the support available to you, I highly recommend you have a conversation with whomever it is, whether it's your leader, counselor, a friend, an advisor, a mentor. And something that I just want to mention, it can make many of us nervous having these career conversations. It can be daunting, regardless of who it's with. So I just want to mention that being nervous is normal. Sometimes we're worried about how we're going to be perceived. We might be afraid of asking for something that we really want, but we're afraid that we might not get it. We don't know what our next steps are. Maybe we're uncertain and we feel like we have to come to the conversation with all of the answers, and we don't. So I just want to mention that it is completely normal to feel anxious or uncertain, even a little bit vulnerable in these moments, especially if we're thinking about talking to our current leader about a shift in our career. Maybe we no longer want to be in the role that we're in, and that's hard. That's a hard conversation. But here's the thing. Feeling nervous means that you care. It means you're invested in your growth, and you're really focusing on making a future that's meaningful to you. And I know at PAX 8, when we're a leader, our role is to support our employees, even if it means them leaving our team or leaving the business. That is our role. So I would say, hopefully, most leaders are going to be happy to support you while you pursue your goals. Now, when we do pursue these career conversations, like really openly and honestly, they really are a powerful tool to help us address challenges and to identify opportunities for learning and advancement that we might not be aware of. I'm a preparer, I'm a processor, so it might help others to prepare for your conversation. It helps me, for example, think about what my thoughts are, what my goals are, so I can articulate them clearly. It provides a structured way to ask for feedback or guidance on specific parts of my plan. And being prepared, for me personally, it really does increase my confidence and reduce some anxiety when I have some structure in my mind of how the conversation might go. Think about, what you're going to share. How much detail are you going to share about your self-reflection? What motivates you? What inspires you? Share to your comfort level. There are going to be times, whoever you're speaking with, maybe it's a brand new relationship and you haven't had a lot of time to build a lot of trust. So maybe you only share what your goals are. That's perfectly appropriate. Maybe if you're working with someone that you have built trust with, you have a longer relationship. So that's when you add some personal details, or you're more vulnerable about what your core values are and really need help getting there. So share to your comfort level. So identify what it is you want to share and how much. And then Also know that you don't have to come into this conversation with all of the answers. That's all right. You're talking with someone so they can help you figure out how to get where you want to go. So it's really going to be helpful for you to take a little time to identify some questions you might want to ask. Um, Maybe it's, what are the skills or the competencies I need to achieve this goal or to get into that next role? What are some blind spots? What are things that you see in me that I might be blind to? Maybe they're weaknesses, but maybe they're strengths. Oftentimes, we downplay our own strengths and only focus on our own weaknesses, so other people can really help us identify our blind spots. While this is sort of an outline for your conversation, just remember this is a two-way dialogue and it's going to take us in all different directions. So don't worry about scripting the entire conversation. It's not just about you sharing your goals and your ambitions. It's about listening to feedback and exploring new perspectives. So don't worry about having such a script. What can be really helpful, though, is to leaning into the seek to understand behavior that we have at PAX 8. We talk about behaviors. Um, Shift your mindset from only focusing on what you're going to say to actively listen and ask questions. This seeking to understand approach really helps you gain valuable insights into the other person's perspective, allows you to see the bigger picture, and maybe identify areas for growth that you didn't even think of yourself. And the last thing I want to talk about with conversations is these aren't one and done, right? It's up to you as the driver to continue the conversation and ask for support, talk through the challenges you're having, talk through the strategies you're learning and how you're applying them. Because when we think about our goals, it's not just a one-time task. So the conversation isn't a one-time conversation either. But it's up to you to keep asking for the conversation or bringing it up and talking through what you need. Bessie and Chris, I'd love to know about the types of career conversations you've had for yourself or as a leader you've had with your employees.
It's a very interesting dynamic. I'm looking at Betsy here and kind of thinking,
He's like, this is where you get to tell Lisa how amazing is a manager-employee relationship that we have. No, I mean, I feel very lucky that I have such a supportive manager who's interested in my career growth and has checked in on me. Something that Lisa and I, we've talked about before of like, oh, do I want to be a people manager one day? What skills would I need there? And kind of being able to talk to you as a resource and talk to Chris as a resource to kind of talk through like, what does that mean? What resources are available to me? I think that has been really helpful. And I think my question back to you, Lisa, is, I have such a great manager, right? But if you do have someone like a manager who's not as supportive or who is, less excited about you talking about these like career conversations, what do you suggest in that scenario for someone?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's the reality for a lot of us. We don't always have supportive leaders. So there are a couple things you can do. If you're comfortable, you can have a skip level conversation with your leader's leader. Find a mentor inside or outside the organization that can help you be an advisor or help you figure out the steps to take to get to your next, to achieve your goal. While it's great to have the support of our leader, we know realistically that's not always the case. So you can find someone else that can support you in your journey.
Great. Chris, back to you. I know I kind of hijacked that a bit. But.
No, I'm glad you did, because I think that was actually a similar kind of framing of, what to do if, when you present these. I think they're great ideas, but sometimes things aren't as clear or linear or open or whatever, that environment. So I think I'm really glad you asked that question. And I think I can speak, I think, on both sides. I think that for a lot of people, change is hard. And career planning conversation means change and transition. And sometimes I think as a manager, you put things into place and you have these expectations, and sometimes it's hard to lead a conversation knowing that might create change. But I think the reality is that change is inevitable anyway. And the more active we are in the conversations, the more encouraging and supportive we are. I think the more we can drive to positive outcomes. I remember coaching, competitive soccer and then having teams. At first, having players promoted to other teams was like awful. You're like, oh no, my best players are leaving, and there's kind of this learning journey as a coach or as a manager that is success. From getting people the skills or what they need to be promoted to a higher team or into a different position that's more fulfilling or whatever the case may be. That's um I think a responsibility that not everybody can embrace, but I think it's really a part of being a good, successful people manager. And Lisa, I know you've like you said, you've had the opportunity to create some of these. You've talked to a lot of people. What stands out in your conversations is you've had a lot of people come to you to have conversations about the career path. Um, are there things that stand out as far as um, common challenges, common questions, common positions that you've been able to kind of help people think through or help guide them to a better place on for career development?
Absolutely. Really perfect cue up. So I think there are two common questions that I get. The first is all about being a manager. So do I need to go into leadership to advance my career? And I'll tell you, I used to think that you needed to be a manager to be successful. So I was, in the role, so the old mindset was if you're great at your job, you should be the manager of that job. If you're great at your job, you should be promoted to manager. That happened to me several times, and I actually really liked it. I appreciated it. And looking back, now that I know about how important it is to perform self-reflection, I realized, well, I liked people management and I was good at it. It didn't fulfill me like having the impact on more people does. So the answer is no. You don't have to go into leadership to advance your career. And more companies are realizing this, that it's critical to allow people to be in the roles they're passionate about and they excel in. We need to reward people by allowing them to continue to grow their skills and their compensation by having the jobs that they want. So here's an example, a very high level example of job tracks or job architecture, which a lot of companies are moving toward. So just to give you like one example, you'll see that under the professional track, I might be an experienced professional level 3. And what this means on this job track is that it's equal to a manager level 1. It means that my role, my responsibilities, and my compensation are considered equivalent to those of a first level manager within this company's job architecture. So a lot of companies are moving toward this job track so people can thrive in their areas of expertise while advancing their skills and their compensation, which is on par with their manager peers, but they don't have to go into leadership for that advancement. So when you're pursuing your next job, ask about job tracks. Ask what do career paths look like for people in professional or non-leadership roles. A lot of companies are moving toward this realization that we need to reward people for being on a professional track, not just for people in leadership. And the second most common question I get is, how do I switch career tracks? Which a little bit aligns with what we were just talking about a few minutes ago, Bessie. Like, what if I want to switch and maybe my leader isn't the best support for me? Find a mentor. They can be inside your organization. They can be outside your organization. Look for connecting with someone that's in the area that you want to pursue and get some insight from them. What competencies or skills helped them get into that area? This one's a little harder, but looking for what you want, what you are passionate about, what the business needs, and maybe a gap at the company. If you find out like I'm in this area and I realize in this area of the business, we really don't focus a lot on processes, but boy, we would benefit so much from that. Maybe you go out to LinkedIn and look for those process efficiency roles on LinkedIn to get some details, not necessarily about switching jobs, but get some details about the job description and create a proposal in your own company to see if you can fill a gap that's fill a need that's currently a gap. Ask for informational interviews. Connect with people in the roles that you're interested in and find out about a day in the life. ask them questions on how they got there, truly what it's like in that job, and find out if that's really the career you want to pursue. You know, take the initiative and develop the skills that you believe you need to advance your career, and raise your hand. So as I mentioned, I was the director of career development. And last year, my leader at the time was talking about the potential of having this new team effectiveness initiative at Pax8. We got off that team call and I called her and I was like, I am very interested in that. That sounds really interesting to me, because I had been the director of career development for like 5 years and I was interested in learning something new and having an impact on teams. And so raise your hand so people know what you're interested in. And I want to mention that I've provided 2 additional support items on the YouTube channel. One toolkit on helping you find a mentor, and then another toolkit for asking. I think it's called Career Pathways. So it's all about asking for informational interviews, and it's got a really expansive questions toolkit so you can have a robust conversation with people. So those are
I love
those
that.
are the 2 questions. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think those are great ones because that's something that we talk about a lot. And I kind of already mentioned that that was a question that even I've had too around like becoming a people manager and having that in alignment. I think it's a conversation we talk about on Academy Live specifically a lot with our MSPs, our partners, where they'll say, I made that mistake of promoting my best tech to service manager, and what a big mistake that was, or that wasn't the right role for them. So these are conversations we're having with our partners too. Chris, do you have anything to kind of elaborate on that part around that promoting that lead tech, or how
yeah.
that?
I think of the term, back in the day, I don't know, but Peter principle, right? When you promoting people, and there's jokes about people being promoted beyond their capacity, but I think the reality is, like you said, it's different skills. The skills to be the technician doing something, and I don't mean like a technician, like computer technician, but I mean whatever trade or skill, project management, or it doesn't matter. There's those skills of doing that in your role doesn't translate into people management skills, and so it's a very different thing. And we kind of, that mindset of this is a natural progression is usually very, very wrong. And I think not really thinking through what does it really take to be successful. And I think what we see and we talk about a lot, here's where the shameless plug of peer groups and academy and instructor-led courses. But what we find where people are successful is as people develop their career path and find new roles, whether it is people management or something like that. That path is providing enablement resources, providing them the tools to be successful, not letting them flounder on their own, putting them in a peer group with other people that have that role or transitioning as well, or taking classes and learning about service management instead of providing service, as an example, is so critical. Now, I want to pivot quick before we run out of time. I want to talk about some of the tools. You did a phenomenal session on like Working Genius, which we don't have a lot of time to get into that, but I know there are tools like DISC. I think I imagine a lot of our viewers are familiar with the DISC. There's personality inventories, there's predictive index, there's Working Genius. Can you just talk a little bit about how some of those tools can help people in their self-assessment or the career development path?
Absolutely, absolutely. So with Working Genius, what I love about Working Genius, without getting into all of the details, is it really allows you to understand the stage of work where you thrive. And what that did for me is it took away the guilt I felt for not being good at other stages of work or comparing myself to leaders that whose brains work differently. I would beat myself up because I didn't have wasn't asking the same big questions as leaders or didn't thrive in these areas. Well, that's because my geniuses were over here. And so it really helps you it helps everyone appreciate each person on the team for what they bring to the table. Predictive index is more about our behavior and what our personal preferences are. I'm an introvert, although I love to talk to people, but then at the end of the day, I want quiet with my pond and animals. So that can help us look at job descriptions. Like if you're an extrovert and the job is working autonomously and not collaboratively, you have to ask yourself, is that really going to be a position where I'm going to thrive? If you are, highly independent, but it requires a lot of collaboration, you have to ask yourself, are you going to be happy with that? If it's in an organization that has constant change, but you like more of a steady pace. So look at those job descriptions and pick up on some of those cues to figure out if you as a person will feel happy in that role. So that's how I think those tools can really, really help us figure out our direction.
And one I used to offer when I was a career advisor in a university was Strength Finder. And I found that one, I was thinking about that a little bit during our conversation today on focusing on your strengths, not just your weaknesses. And that's one to look into as well. I think it's pretty interesting to think about what are my strengths and really honing into those strengths, pretty similar to some of those other ones. But
yeah. I love it. That's where I found my happiness came from when I was leaning my strengths.
Yeah, well, and that's what I want to lean into real quick is just that idea of, yes, there are times when we need to fill in gaps. We need to develop skills that maybe we've not thought about that are not as common for us or not as familiar. And we absolutely can. But in a minute here, we're going to get into sales pitch. So I'm going to throw out that analogy of, I've used this before a lot about if you're right-handed, learning to bat left-handed. You can spend 80% of your time trying to learn to bat, the opposite hand and only gain 3 to 5%, improvement, right? It's a lot of effort for very little return to really focus on something that really isn't going to be a strength versus if you're right-handed and you bat right, but look at your technique. You can spend that same amount of, spend 10, 20% amount of time and get 10%, that the returns on the effort on focusing on your strengths has so much greater yield return. I mean, you've expressed that. Do you have any examples or anything to lean into that a little bit as a last comment?
What a great analogy as far as left hand, right hand. I was just thinking, like, I really love supporting people. I am that role of how do I help uplift other people. So when I was in a role that was more tactical, launching our learning management system, working behind the scenes, that's where it got a little boring and tedious. And when you find yourself procrastinating a lot on what your job is, maybe then you should reevaluate. Is we all have things that we need to do that aren't our favorite things. But if the majority of your job is like, take some time for self-discovery and think about what does bring you joy. What are the tasks that you get lost in and the day just flies, and see if there are ways you can increase those types of tasks in your daily job.
I love that. Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today and for providing all these resources that are available in the description below. So you can just go ahead and download those. If you're a Paxator listening, hopefully you learned about Lisa's role and you're going to go to one of her team's events. And if you're a Paxate partner of ours, hopefully you learned a lot about driving your own career, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're on a team at an MSP, whatever role you might have. Hopefully you've taken a lot out of this today. So thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us. And next, we're going to take a look at sales pitch.
Play ball! When I was playing baseball, I had that competitive drive inside me. Look, I wasn't blessed to have the talents that Major League Baseball players have. Far from it. My goal was just to be the best that I could be, to be competitive. That meant spending more time in the batting cage, throwing the ball and playing catch all year round as often as I could, and just becoming a better athlete. This message is for sales professionals and the MSP owners who are currently responsible for growing your business. In sales, you don't need to be this high-performing athlete, but you do need to be high-performing. The best salespeople ask questions. They seek to understand. They want to help others. They want to build relationships and are good at it. And they're always learning. Let's touch all the bases on strategies to propel your sales career. 1. Continuous learning and development. The key word is continuous. Investing in your education and skill development is paramount. Enroll in advanced sales courses, attend industry events, get a sales coach. 2. Build strong relationships. Sales is fundamentally all about relationships. It's vital to cultivate relationships with colleagues, industry peers, centers of influence, and your ideal prospects. Networking is vital. Joining professional associations where your ideal prospects attend and leveraging LinkedIn are some examples to expand your personal connections. 3. Setting and exceeding goals. If you set a benchmark to meet your goals, there's a chance you may miss them. Set goals to exceed your targets. If your company sets some sort of sales quota or goal for you, set one yourself that meets your income goals instead of what the company wants. If you don't have income goals, get them. If the company sets a goal for you, set a goal higher than that so that way you can kind of reach for it. Use the SMART framework to kind of go from that. If you're not familiar with SMART, look it up. 4. Leveraging technology and data. CRM systems, sales automation tools, and data analytic platforms can provide valuable insights to sales trends, performance behaviors, and even customer behaviors. Use these insights to tailor your sales strategies and make informed decisions that drive results. By focusing on continuous improvement, relationship building, goal setting, and technology adoption, you can significantly propel your career and achieve sustained success. Each of these strategies requires dedication and a proactive approach, but the rewards will be well worth the efforts. Sales skills are learned. Go be the best you can be and knock your sales quota and your income out of the park.
Play ball!
Thank you so much, Keith, for doing this week's sales pitch. We always learn so much from you. We also want to give a huge thank you again to our guest, Lisa. Lisa provided some helpful links in our YouTube page. So if you look below, make sure to check them out. We have the Drive Your Career Participant Guide that Lisa was walking through in her presentation. We also have the Finding a Right Mentor self-guided toolkit and the Pathway Discovery Program workbook. So make sure you download those and check them out if you're interested. So now just my final thoughts. I love today's episode. So if you aren't familiar, in my previous roles back before I joined Pax8, I was a career advisor at a university. So these conversations really just hit home for me, and think about the conversations I used to have with my students when I was at that university, and how career development doesn't end right when you're at the beginning. Career development is continuing throughout your entire life and until you retire for certain. We have someone on our team who's retired several times. So you never know. It could always kind of continue, and you could always have more opportunities to grow in your career. So take that time for self-reflection and take ownership so that you can move forward in the career that you want. Chris, what's your final thought?
I love that they say if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So whether it's cheesy or not, I like it because I do find that that passion, that the things that drive you and fill your cup are just it's just amazing what a difference. Lisa even shared in her own experience how the kind of this you know uh maybe it wasn't like lights and noises and buzzing go off, but there was a distinct change for her in her life and her fulfillment and excitement to really dig into her role. I think just that awareness, that self-exploration are critical. And my final thought is really kind of about, it's okay to be messy. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not a linear path. It's not just a singular track. It's not the rungs go up one ladder. It's like the jungle gym. Might go sideways. You might try different things. You learn and explore. it definitely is a journey. So I think that's kind of my final thought.
I love it. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Be sure to check us out next week. I'll be doing a solo show called How to Prepare for a Conference with a lot of great tips, both on the conference itself and travel, different areas. So make sure to check us out. Remember, we're live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time and on demand always. So don't forget to subscribe and like us on our YouTube channel. Chris, want to get our final close out?
Absolutely. As Rex would say, ask yourself, what are you going to do differently tomorrow to improve your business? Thanks for watching.
Bye.